Hey, Mark Steyn in for us. Let's go to Doug on the Isle of Palm, South Carolina. Not Palm Beach, not Palm Springs, but Isle of Palm. Doug, you're live on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Mark. You and I grew up in the same square mile in suburban Toronto, 25 years apart.
Oh, right. Oh, that's great. Where are you from? The Royal York, Etobicoke kind of corner of town? Oh, wonderful. Great to have you.
So,
and
Mark, I have
fled south
a compliment and a question.
Okay.
First of all, when Rush announced you're coming on this week, I pulled out America Alone because I thought I should just sort of refresh myself. In 2006, you called what's happening in Europe like a play-by-play over about 50 pages. It's exactly you were incredibly prescient.
Yeah, I didn't want to be. If you write a kind of apocalyptic book, you want to do it so people will prevent the scenario from happening. I think I've got a section in there called Eurabian Night. As Europe descends into Eurabia, and I talk about the four horsemen of the eupocalypse, or whatever I call it in there, and basically everything I did say about the demographic decline and the resurgence of Islam. Basically, instead of saying, oh, this is terrible, we need to avert this, Angela Merkel in Germany said, this is great, and put her foot on the gas and decided to accelerate the process. So it gives me no pride to realize I was right on that, because I think it's a tragedy what's happening in Europe, and I certainly don't want anything similar to happen here. But that is a prescient book. And if you're a Rush Limbaugh listener and you haven't read that book, it stands up pretty well today. Not 100%, these things never do, but in terms of the demographic decline of Europe and what is happening in Germany, Austria, France, Belgium, Sweden, the Netherlands, it's pretty much on the money, and even from this distance, Doug.
Now a question.
Okay.
I know your UK credentials and your global thoughts. What do you think is going to happen with Brexit, the UK's attempt to disengage from Europe?
Well, I'm in favour of Brexit because I think the European Union is a super centralised state. The reason the United States has survived is because until fairly recently it was a decentralised federation. If it had been as centralised as the European Union is trying to be, it would have collapsed by about 1793. We're now seeing that centralisation. With Obama's appointment of the Attorney General as Chief Commissar of Bathrooms from Maine to Hawaii. That's the kind of thing they do in the European Union. This guy, Herman Van Rompuy, who is an apparatchik who, under some backroom deal between the Germans and the French, gets to call himself President of Europe. He's an obscure Belgian. No one had ever heard of, and now he's an obscure Belgian no one's ever heard of with President of Europe on his business card. It's amazing how that happens over there. But this guy, Herman Van Rompuy, said a couple of years ago, this is the beginning of the age of global governance. Where do you go to vote out global governance if you object to it? What polling station? What town hall? What school gym? Do you get to go and get a ballot paper if you disagree with global governance? That's how the elite in the European Union look at it. And the fact is that for Britain, which is off the coast of Europe, but throughout its history has been an outward-looking nation. That's why it settled North America and Australia and New Zealand, and it went to India and to Belize and to South Africa and all these other places. It doesn't primarily think of itself as a continental power. And, Doug, I am in favour of the citizens of the United Kingdom voting to leave the European Union in the referendum next month. And I was honoured to appear on stage in Toronto recently with Nigel Farage, who is the leader of the UK Independence Party. The fact of the matter is that we are at a critical time for both halves of the Western world, in North America and Europe, where they are turning in on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean. They are turning into these super elite technocrat superstates, centralized superstates, where a small number of clever people, whether it's the curvature of bananas in Europe or transgendered bathrooms in America, which is also not unrelated to the curvature of your banana, they are declining into these centralized superstates, and that's wrong.